This is the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to St. John. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because the hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord. Please be seated. I am the good shepherd. I think all of us probably love that image. But the time that we think of it probably most poignantly is at a funeral, which is when we usually hear the 23rd Psalm, and we listen to lots of imagery about the good shepherd leading his sheep into whatever comes after our mortal deaths. But for a society that really loves Jesus in many, many ways, we really don't like sheep. Right? I mean, to call someone, like to say to someone is like a sheep is not a compliment. Right? Other than lemmings who are unfairly persecuted, only sheep are considered really, really, really stupid. Ostriches sometimes a little bit too, right? Because they were sticking their head in the sand, even though ostriches don't actually stick their head in the sand. But anyway, sheep actually are not so bright. And so we don't really look at it as a compliment to be called sheep-like. You know who we really like? We like wolves. We love wolves. I mean, they're scary, but we kind of respect things that scare us way more than things that we eat. That's just kind of how it works. I don't know why it is, but we seem to really like wolves. In fact, if you go to the zoo, they have two different kinds of wolves. They have red wolves and gray wolves. And they're really cool. There's always lots of people. You know what they don't have at the zoo? Sheep. They have goats, but as we know from the parable of the goats and the sheep, those aren't the same thing. We like wolves. And you know, the thing is, I can kind of really understand that wolves, they feel like they're independent and they can do what they want, and they're social, right? I mean, they work in groups, they love their babies, and we really like wolves. But Jesus here tells us that we are, for some reason, supposed to be like sheep. And I think that's really, really difficult for us because we don't really look at sheep positively. Although I think there's a lot of wisdom in sheep, truth be told. Because sheep, you know, they work together, and sheep don't really have grand ambitions for themselves. Sheep, they kind of just want to walk around and bask in the sun and eat the grass and maybe drink some water. And they're happy to go where the shepherd leads them. Actually, being a sheep sounds pretty cool, I think. Being a wolf, not so much, right? Because you're always having to find something to go and eat it. It's tough to be a predator. But we as a society often hold up predatory behavior as admirable in some way, right? Like the captains of industry who really become captains of industry more or less by taking advantage of workers' treatment. But I don't want to get into that too much. But just to say that predatory behavior tends to be the behavior that we reward. And Jesus tells us that that's probably not the pathway to the best life that God has envisioned for us. So what are we supposed to do about the wolves? There is an animal that is kind of somewhere in between the sheep and the wolves. It has a lot of the wolves' admirable qualities. They're brave, they're courageous, and they guard, and they are social, and they love their young ones. But like the sheep, they aren't super aggressive. They love to work together with people. And those are dogs, right? See, they already guessed it. Good job, Kate. We're afraid of wolves, although we kind of admire them. And we think sheep are kind of stupid, but dogs are kind of the sweet spot in the middle, I think. And I think that we live in a compromised world where really living into the call that Jesus has for us is quite difficult because we are surrounded by sort of systemic sins that make it really hard for us to fully live into the life that Christ offers. As much as we try, we continually seem to fall short. And so maybe instead of aiming for sheep, we should just aim to be dogs. Now, if you're a cat person, let me just say, I love cats. Anybody here a cat person? All right. Since you are here, let me just say, I love cats. And I have cats of my own. I've had cats my whole life. I also have dogs and guinea pigs and fish. I've also had horses in the past. I have too many animals. At any rate, cats are cool. But you know, cats, they're kind of like aloof and loners. And as much as I think I love cats, I'm pretty sure that's not what Jesus is calling us to be. Although I'm also sure that when we get to heaven, there are cats there. So I don't want to malign the cat people among us, but I really want to get back to talking about dogs because I think dogs are really, really lovely and wonderful. And occasionally you have a bad dog, but when a bad dog who acts like a wolf, we go, that's a bad dog, right? We know that that's not how dogs are supposed to be. And the really interesting thing is that dogs are actually wolves who've been converted. They've accepted Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Sure. That's why all dogs go to heaven. But here's the thing, right? I mean, actually, dogs are wolves. And how dogs became out of wolves is one of those kind of mysteries. But several years ago, I think actually several decades ago, in Russia, they did this fascinating experiment, not with wolves, but with foxes. And what these scientists did is they captured a bunch of wild fox. And these fox, you know, they're like aggressive and fox-like. And what they did is they would only allow some of the foxes to reproduce. And they chose the foxes that were the friendliest, that were willing to kind of like eat out of the scientist's hands or that sort of help each other. And after about 3 generations, the fox were completely transformed. Their ears got kind of droopy and their faces got bigger and their eyes got wider. They would wag their tails. They basically turned into dogs, right? And so it's probably the case that that's what actually happened with wolves all those years ago, that this fierce predator, that the ones who were most open to the idea of living together in community, those who were most willing to trust and another animal, people who generally go around killing them, that those who were most trustworthy and those who were most friendly and those that were most communally minded, they became dogs. And we've done a lot of weird things to dogs over the years, and now we have things like pugs. I don't really understand that, but if you have a pug, I'm sorry, but that weird smooshed up face, it's kind of creeps me out. Anyway. And I think it's true that this is a great pattern for us to think about how we go through our lives. Because we are kind of wolf-like. We are predators. I mean, that's our biology. And in a culture that sort of lifts up predatory behavior, I think there's another calling here for us. To lean into trust. To lean into community. To lean into wanting to help our fellows, of encountering things that maybe we should be afraid of, maybe giving them a chance anyway. Because I think there's a pathway to redemption for us here in a world beset by systemic sins, not by violently pushing against them or fighting against them, but just learning to trust those that seem untrustworthy. If we can't quite be sheep, then maybe we could be dogs. faithful dogs.